Bride with veil, broken heart, my husband poisoned me just to take my father's property and use it to care for another woman. Yes, you heard me right. I was lying on the cold floor of my own bedroom, gasping for air, my tongue heavy, my stomach burning like fire. The food I had eaten minutes ago suddenly felt like it was killing me from the inside. I tried to scream, but my voice cracked, my vision blurred, and right before me, I saw the man who had vowed to love and protect me, my husband, standing over me with a calm face. Not fear, not panic, but calm, as though everything was happening exactly the way he wanted. Why are you doing this to me? I whispered, fighting the poison that was already crawling through my veins. He leaned closer, his breath hot against my ear, and said words that broke my heart into pieces that could never be fixed. You are standing in the way of my future. Once you're gone, everything your father left will be mine, and I know exactly how to spend it. On the woman who deserves my love. Yes, viewers, another woman. The man I gave my whole heart to, the man I trusted with my life, had poisoned me. Not because I wronged him, not because I was unfaithful, but because my father's property was more important to him than my life. I could hear my heartbeat racing like a drum. My legs grew weak. My eyes rolled back. My chest tightened. Was this how my story would end? Would I die here, betrayed by the very man I called my husband? But right at the moment I thought I would lose everything, something happened. Something that changed the course of everything. Viewers, before I tell you what happened next, let me introduce myself. My name is Margaret. I am 72 years old, and I am speaking to you from Atlanta, Georgia, here in the United States. My story is not a fairy tale, it is not fiction, it is my life. A painful memory that still haunts me to this day. And as I share it, I want you to remember this. Sometimes, the people we trust most can be the ones who hurt us the deepest. Now, before I continue, I need you to do something for me. Please subscribe, like this video, and click the notification button so you don't miss any of the upcoming chapters of my story. And tell me in the comments, from which part of the country are you watching this from? I love knowing where my family of viewers is joining me from. Now, let's go back to the beginning, so you will understand how I, Margaret, ended up on that bedroom floor poisoned by the man I thought was my forever. I was born into a comfortable family. My father was a respected businessman in our town, and my mother was a teacher. I was their only daughter, and they loved me dearly. I never lacked anything, not food, not clothes, not education. My father always told me, Margaret, one day all of this will be yours. But choose wisely who you let into your life. Not everyone who smiles at you means you well. Back then, I didn't fully understand his words. I thought everyone who showed me love was genuine. I thought the world was simple, good and safe. But I was wrong. When I turned 21, I met Thomas. Oh, Thomas, tall, handsome, with a smile that could melt ice. He came into my life like a hero, always ready to carry my bags, always ready with sweet words, always making me laugh. My friends envied me. My neighbors admired us. Everyone said, Margaret, you are lucky to have found such a caring man. And I believed them. Thomas courted me for 2 years before asking for my hand in marriage. My parents were cautious. My father in particular looked at Thomas with searching eyes. I remember one evening he pulled me aside and said, Margaret, love is beautiful, but please open your eyes. Sometimes men hide their true faces until it is too late. I laughed, hugged him and said, Papa, you worry too much. Thomas loves me. I feel it. I know it. But my father was right. We got married in a grand ceremony. The church was filled with people, flowers everywhere, music in the air. I wore a white gown, my veil flowing behind me. As I walked down the aisle, I thought I was walking into a life of happiness. Little did I know, I was walking into the arms of betrayal. At first, everything was sweet. Thomas treated me kindly, spoke softly, and made me feel like the queen of his world. But slowly, cracks began to show. He would disappear for hours with excuses I didn't fully believe. He would speak harshly when I asked too many questions. And most of all, he seemed more interested in my father's wealth than in building a home with me. I remember one night, after my father passed away, Thomas came to me and said, Margaret, now that everything belongs to you, We must use it wisely. I smiled and agreed, not knowing that his definition of wisely was very different from mine. While I thought of building schools, helping the poor, and making investments, he thought of something else, another woman. And then one day, I stumbled upon a letter. A love letter hidden in his jacket pocket. It wasn't addressed to me. It was addressed to a woman named Evelyn. My hands shook as I read the words. My chest tightened. My whole world spun. He had been seeing another woman all along. I confronted him, and instead of denying it, he laughed. Margaret, you think money is for wasting on charity? No. Money is for living. Evelyn understands me. You don't. My heart shattered that night. But I thought that was the worst of it. I thought betrayal was the deepest pain he could give me. I was wrong. Because betrayal was nothing compared to what he did next. One evening after dinner, I felt my stomach twist in pain. My head spun. My tongue went dry. And as I struggled to breathe, I realized what had happened. My husband had poisoned me. And viewers, as I fell to the floor, fighting for my life, Thomas bent over and whispered in my ear the cruelest words I had ever heard. You will die tonight, Margaret. And everything your father worked for will finally be mine. But just as my eyes began to close, something unexpected happened. Something no one could have predicted. My body trembled as the poison spread deeper. I could feel my heartbeat slowing, my breath cutting short, my strength slipping away. Thomas stood there, watching me, his face cold. He had no fear, no guilt. Just certainty. He believed this was the end for me. But then there was a knock on the door. A strong, urgent knock that echoed through the house. Thomas froze. His plan had not included interruptions. He looked toward the door, then back at me on the floor. I wanted to scream for help, but the poison had stolen my voice. All I could do was pray in my heart that whoever was at that door would not leave. Thomas! Thomas, open this door. A voice called. It was my neighbor, Mr. Williams, an elderly man who lived 2 houses away. He had come to return a book I had lent his wife earlier that week. Thomas cursed under his breath. He quickly dragged me by the arm and pushed me behind the bed where I couldn't be seen. My body was heavy, limp, but inside my soul was screaming. He walked to the door and opened it, trying to sound calm. Oh, Mr. Williams. What brings you here this late? Mr. Williams handed him the book, but his sharp old eyes noticed something. Is everything all right? You look tense. Thomas forced a smile. I'm fine. Margaret is resting. She's a bit tired. From behind the bed I tried to knock to make a sound, anything. But my hands were weak. My nails only scratched lightly against the floor. Mr. Williams hesitated for a moment. He even peered past Thomas as though he could sense something was wrong. My heart begged him to step inside, but he didn't. Instead, he gave a small nod and left, saying, Tell Margaret I'll check on her tomorrow. And just like that, my hope disappeared with the closing of the door. Thomas locked it again and came back to me. His eyes were darker this time, angrier. You almost ruined everything, he hissed. But don't worry. By morning, no one will ever see you alive again. He lifted a pillow from the bed and pressed it over my face. I kicked weakly, fought, clawed, but the poison had stolen my strength. My lungs screamed for air, my body thrashed, and in that moment, I truly believed it was the end. But then another sound came. This time, not from the door, but from inside the house. The sound of glass breaking. Thomas froze. His head shot up. We both heard footsteps, fast and heavy, moving through the living room. Margaret, a voice shouted. My heart almost stopped. This time, not from poison but from shock. Because the voice I heard was one I had not expected. It was my cousin, Daniel. The cousin who had left for New York years ago, the one we all thought had cut ties with the family. He had returned. And he had returned at the exact moment my life was hanging by a thread. Thomas's eyes widened in fury. He dropped the pillow, grabbed a knife from the drawer, and stood waiting for Daniel to come through the door. And me? I lay on the floor, poisoned, struggling for breath, knowing that the next few seconds would decide everything, my life, my father's property, and the truth about my husband's wickedness. The door burst open. Daniel rushed in. His eyes fell on me lying helpless on the floor, then on Thomas holding the knife. Thomas. Daniel roared. What have you done? Thomas. Daniel's voice thundered through the room as he stepped forward, his fists clenched. What have you done to Margaret? Thomas tightened his grip on the knife, his eyes cold, his jaw locked. Stay out of this, Daniel. This is none of your business. But Daniel's eyes swept the room. Falling on me sprawled on the floor, my lips pale, my breath shallow. His face turned red with rage. None of my business? She's my cousin, my family. And you tried to kill her? My vision blurred, but I could still see the two men facing each other like predators. My body begged for air, my heart raced, my mind screamed. Daniel, please, don't let him finish me. Thomas raised the knife higher. If you know what's good for you, Daniel, you'll walk away. You didn't see anything. You didn't hear anything. Just leave, or I'll make sure you never walk again. Daniel didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low and firm. Try it. Just try it, Thomas. You'll regret the day you laid your hands on her. The tension was thick, the silence heavy. All I could hear was my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. Then, with a sudden roar, Thomas lunged at Daniel with the knife. I wanted to scream, but the poison kept my voice trapped inside me. My fingers clawed weakly at the carpet as I watched the blade flash in the dim light. Daniel moved quickly, grabbing Thomas's wrist before the knife could strike. The two of them wrestled, pushing, pulling, grunting with rage. Furniture toppled. A lamp shattered on the floor. The whole room shook with their struggle. For a moment, I thought Thomas might win. He was strong, desperate, and filled with wicked determination. But Daniel had something Thomas didn't. The strength of love and loyalty. With one powerful move, Daniel twisted Thomas's arm until the knife clattered to the ground. He shoved Thomas back against the wall, pinning him with his weight. You're finished, Thomas. Daniel shouted. But Thomas only smirked, even in defeat. Am I? You think this ends here? You don't know anything, Daniel. You don't know who you're up against. Daniel growled, his grip tightening. I know enough. You poisoned Margaret. You betrayed her. And now you'll pay for it. The room spun around me. My chest heaved. I could hear their voices, but my body was growing colder, weaker. My vision dimmed, my eyes fluttered. And then, a memory flickered in my mind. I saw myself as a little girl, sitting on my father's lap. His voice was gentle but firm as he said, Margaret, never ignore the signs. A snake may wear the skin of a friend, but it will always strike when you least expect it. Stay awake. Stay watchful. Tears rolled down my cheeks. Oh, Papa. If only I had listened better. Daniel turned his head, shouting, Margaret! Hold on, cousin. I'll get you help. But that split second of distraction was all Thomas needed. With a sudden burst of strength, he shoved Daniel off him, grabbed the knife again, and slashed wildly. Daniel staggered back, clutching his arm, blood dripping through his fingers. No, I tried to scream, but it came out as a weak whisper. Thomas's eyes glowed with madness. If I can't have the property, then nobody will. I'll end her life now, and yours too, Daniel. He raised the knife high above his head, aiming straight for me this time. And just as the blade began to fall, the sound of sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. The police were here. The sirens screamed louder, their red and blue lights flashing against the curtains like lightning in a storm. Thomas froze mid-swing, the knife still hovering above me. His wild eyes darted toward the window, his face pale for the first time that night. Police, he hissed, his voice trembling with fury. Daniel, clutching his bleeding arm, staggered to his feet. It's over, Thomas. Drop the knife before they come in here, and finish what I started. But Thomas wasn't done. His eyes burned with desperation. He looked down at me, lying helpless, poisoned and gasping for air, then back at Daniel, who was still weak from blood loss. And in that twisted moment, he seemed to realize he had nothing left to lose. If I'm going down, he muttered, his grip tightening on the knife, then I'm taking her with me. I closed my eyes. I thought it was the end. But before the blade could touch me, the door crashed open with a deafening bang. Police officers stormed inside, their guns raised. Drop the weapon, one shouted. Thomas froze again, his chest heaving. His eyes flicked from the police to me, then to Daniel. And then to everyone's shock he smiled. Slowly, carefully, he lowered the knife to the floor and raised his hands in surrender. But there was something in his smile that chilled my blood. It wasn't defeat. It was confidence. As though he knew something the rest of us didn't. The officers rushed to cuff him, but he didn't resist. He let them take him, all while keeping that strange smirk on his face. Daniel ran to my side, tears in his eyes. "Margaret, stay with me. You're going to be okay." The officers called for an ambulance. My vision dimmed, my breathing shallow. The last thing I remembered before blacking out was Thomas's voice as he was dragged out the door. "This isn't the end, Margaret. Not for me, and not for you." I woke up in a hospital bed, machines beeping softly around me. The room smelled of medicine, clean sheets, and faint antiseptic. My throat burned, my stomach ached, and my body felt weaker than ever. But I was alive. Daniel sat by my side, his arm wrapped in fresh bandages. His eyes lit up when I stirred. "You're awake, thank God." I tried to speak, but my voice was hoarse. "Thomas. He's in custody," Daniel said firmly. "The police have him. You don't need to worry anymore." But something in my heart didn't settle. I remembered the way Thomas had smiled, the way he had spoken as if he still had control. I shook my head weakly. "No, it's not over. I know him. He won't stop." Daniel placed a hand on mine. "Then we'll be ready." The days passed. Slowly, my strength began to return. The doctors said I was lucky to survive. The poison had nearly taken my life. But survival came with its own weight. News spread quickly in town. Neighbors whispered. Friends avoided my eyes. My once perfect marriage was now the subject of scandal. And in the middle of it all, I couldn't escape the haunting question. Why wasn't I enough for the man I loved? Why was my father's property more precious to him than my life? One evening, as I sat by the window of my hospital room, Daniel brought me a small box. "This was in Thomas's study," he said quietly. "The police allowed me to collect some of your belongings. You should see this." My hands shook as I opened the box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written by Thomas to Evelyn, the woman he had chosen over me. As I read the words, my stomach twisted, not from poison this time but from heartbreak. He had promised her everything. My father's wealth, our home, even the life I thought we were building together. And at the bottom of the pile was one final letter, one that made my blood run cold. It wasn't addressed to Evelyn. It was addressed to someone else, someone I knew. And in that letter, Thomas revealed a secret so dark, so shocking, it made me realize the worst was still yet to come. My fingers trembled as I unfolded the last letter. The handwriting was Thomas's, sharp, hurried, the same way he signed checks and wrote quick notes for me in the early days of our marriage. But this letter was different. It was addressed not to Evelyn, but to my own cousin Daniel. Yes, Daniel, the very man who had just saved my life. My breath caught. My heart raced. Why would Thomas write to him? Daniel leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "What does it say?" I hesitated, then read aloud. My voice cracked as the words spilled into the quiet hospital room. "Daniel, you think you can protect her. You think you've outsmarted me. But you don't know the full story. You were never the hero. You were always just a piece of the plan. When the time is right, you will understand. Everything belongs to me. Not Margaret, not you, not anyone else. Only me, Thomas." My hands went cold. My eyes darted to Daniel, searching for answers. What does he mean? Why would he write something like this to you? Daniel looked just as shaken as I was. His face drained of color. He shook his head slowly. I don't know. I swear, Margaret, I don't. But I could see it in his eyes. There was something he wasn't telling me. The room grew heavy with silence. Machines beeped softly. I felt the walls closing in. Had Thomas been plotting not just against me, but against Daniel as well? And if so, how far did his plan go? Daniel reached for the letter, crumpling it tightly in his fist. "Don't let this get to you. He's just playing mind games. That's what men like him do. They twist words to make you doubt the people you love." But doubt had already planted its seed in my heart. That night, as I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the thought. What if Thomas was telling the truth? What if Daniel wasn't just a savior, but also part of the story in ways I didn't yet understand. Days turned into a week. The doctors discharged me, though they warned I needed rest. Daniel stayed close, making sure I was safe. He cooked, he cleaned, he handled visitors. He became the brother I never had. And yet, every time he looked at me, I wondered. Every time he touched my hand to comfort me, I remembered Thomas's words. You were always just a piece of the plan. One evening, as Daniel was locking up the house, I walked into the study where Thomas's letters had been kept. Something drew me there, like a whisper in my soul. I opened the desk drawers, one after another. Most were empty, but then, hidden beneath a pile of old bills, I found a small black notebook. My heart pounded as I flipped it open. It wasn't just a notebook. It was a record. Page after page, Thomas had written his thoughts, his plans, his secrets. And there, in his own words, I found the truth I had feared. He had known Daniel long before I thought. They had met years earlier, in New York. They had done business together. And worse, Thomas had once trusted Daniel with information about my father's estate. A chill ran down my spine. Why hadn't Daniel told me this? Why had he kept it a secret all this time? Just then the door creaked behind me. I turned, the notebook still in my hand. Daniel stood there, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the book. Margaret, he whispered, his voice low and uneasy. Where did you find that? The notebook slipped in my trembling hands. Why didn't you tell me, Daniel? Why did you hide this from me? His mouth opened, but before he could answer, a rock shattered the study window. I screamed as glass rained down. Daniel pulled me back, shielding me with his body. Outside, footsteps ran into the night. On the floor where the rock had landed was a note tied with string. Daniel picked it up, his hand shaking as he read it aloud. You think she's safe, but she's not. I will come back for what is mine. Thomas. The note lay on the floor, its words burning into my mind like fire. You think she's safe, but she's not. I will come back for what is mine. Thomas. My hands shook as I clutched Daniel's arm. He's supposed to be in jail. How did he get this note here? Daniel's jaw tightened. He crumpled the paper, his eyes dark with fury. It means one thing, Margaret, he's not acting alone. Someone's helping him. My stomach twisted. The idea that Thomas had allies out there, people willing to break windows in the night to deliver threats, made the air in the room feel heavy. It wasn't over. Not even close. I turned to Daniel, my voice trembling. But first, you need to tell me the truth. Why did Thomas write about you in that notebook? Why didn't you tell me you knew him before? Daniel's face paled. He rubbed his bandaged arm, avoiding my eyes. For a long moment, the silence stretched between us. Then he sighed deeply. Margaret. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think I was part of this. Years ago, when I lived in New York, Thomas and I did cross paths. We worked in the same company for a short while. He was charming, clever, and dangerous, though I didn't realize it at first. He always asked questions about our family, about your father's business. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But when I found out he was marrying you, I cut ties immediately. I thought it was safer if you didn't know. My heart pounded. Safer? Daniel, don't you see? He used you. He used our family. He's been planning this for years. Daniel clenched his fists. I know. And I will do whatever it takes to protect you now. But could I trust him? Truly trust him? My father's words echoed in my mind. A snake may wear the skin of a friend, but it will always strike when you least expect it. The next morning, the police came to inspect the broken window. I showed them the note, praying they'd finally move Thomas into higher security, but the officer only shook his head. Ma'am, we checked the prison records. Thomas was transferred last night to a larger facility upstate. He couldn't have been here. A chill ran through me. Then who brought the note? The officer hesitated. We'll investigate. But if I were you, I'd stay alert. Whoever did this knows where you live. And they wanted you afraid. As the officers left, Daniel locked every door and window, his eyes scanning the yard like a soldier preparing for battle. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Thomas's words weren't just threats. They were promises. Days passed in uneasy silence. Daniel stayed close, cooking me meals, guarding the house. But even in those quiet moments, I felt the walls closing in. The letters, the broken glass, the poison. I carried them all inside me like heavy stones. One night, unable to sleep, I wandered into the kitchen for water. The house was dark, silent except for the ticking of the clock. As I poured a glass, I noticed something strange. Daniel's jacket draped over the chair, with a folded paper peeking out of the pocket. My hands trembled as I pulled it free. It was another letter. But this one wasn't from Thomas. It was from Evelyn, the woman who had stolen my husband's heart. My blood ran cold as I read the words. Daniel, thank you for keeping me updated. Soon it will all be settled, and Margaret will no longer be in the way. Stay patient. Evelyn. The glass slipped from my hands and shattered on the floor. Daniel's voice came from the doorway, low and heavy. Margaret, what are you doing with that letter? The letter shook in my trembling hands. Evelyn's words burned into my mind. Daniel, thank you for keeping me updated. Soon it will all be settled, and Margaret will no longer be in the way. Stay patient. Evelyn. The man who had saved me, the cousin I trusted, the only family I thought I had left. Was his loyalty a lie too? My chest heaved as I looked up. Daniel stood in the doorway, his face shadowed by the dim kitchen light. His eyes were fixed on the letter. Margaret, he said slowly, his voice a mix of calm and warning. Put that down. I stepped back, clutching the paper tighter. No. You explain this to me right now. Why is Evelyn writing to you? Why is she thanking you for keeping her updated? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. It's not what you think. Tears stung my eyes. Not what I think. Daniel, the woman who destroyed my marriage, the woman Thomas betrayed me with, she's writing letters to you. And you kept this from me. Tell me the truth. Are you working with her? Daniel took a step closer, his hands raised as though calming a wild animal. Listen to me, cousin. I kept that letter because I didn't want to worry you. Evelyn, she reached out to me weeks ago. She tried to use me to get to you. She wanted information, she wanted access. But I never gave her anything. I swear it. Then why keep the letter? I demanded. His eyes hardened. Because I wanted proof. Proof that she's still part of this. Proof that she's helping Thomas from the outside. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the idea that Daniel truly was the cousin who saved me. The cousin who cared. But doubt not at me. I shook my head, my voice breaking. Why didn't you show this to the police? Why hide it from me? Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. Because the police don't care, Margaret. You've seen it. They're not protecting you the way they should. If I gave them this, they'd file it away and do nothing. And you? You've been through enough. I didn't want to add to your fear. My heart pounded. His words made sense, but his secrecy cut me deeply. Could I really trust him anymore? Before I could answer, there was a noise outside. A car engine, idling in the driveway. Daniel's head snapped toward the window. His whole body tensed. Stay here, he whispered, grabbing a flashlight from the counter. I clutched the edge of the table, my breath shallow. The sound of the car door slamming echoed through the night. Heavy footsteps crunched against the gravel outside. Through the glass, I saw the silhouette of a woman. Tall, slim, dressed in a long coat. My heart stopped. It was Evelyn. She had come to my house. Daniel rushed to the front door, but before he could open it, Evelyn's voice rang out clear and sharp. Margaret, I know you're inside. It's time you faced the truth. I froze, my body trembling. Why was she here? What did she want? Daniel turned back to me, his face pale. Don't move. Don't answer her. But Evelyn's next words made my blood run cold. Margaret, Thomas isn't your only enemy. Ask Daniel what he hasn't told you. Evelyn's voice cut through the night like a knife. Margaret, stop hiding behind Daniel. He's not who you think he is. Her words pierced me, leaving me frozen where I stood in the kitchen. My chest tightened. My head spun. Hadn't I already suffered enough betrayal? First Thomas and now this? Daniel's face hardened. He turned back toward me, his eyes fierce. Don't listen to her, Margaret. She's trying to turn you against me. That's what she does. She twists everything. But my hand shook as I whispered. Then why is she here, Daniel? Why does she know things I don't? The sound of Evelyn's footsteps grew louder as she walked closer to the door. Then with a sudden crash she kicked it open. The door swung wide, slamming against the wall. She stood in the doorway, tall and unbothered, her long coat swaying in the night breeze. Her lips curled into a smile, not warm, but cold, victorious. "Well," she said softly, her eyes locking on me. "There you are, Margaret. The woman who thought she had it all. The house, the money, the husband. And yet you ended up with nothing." Her words stung like acid. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, but my throat went dry. Daniel stepped between us, his voice low and firm. "Evelyn, leave now before I call the police." Evelyn tilted her head, almost amused. "Oh, Daniel. Still pretending to be her hero, I see. But tell me, have you told Margaret how deep your hands are in this? Or are you still playing the loyal cousin?" My heart skipped a beat. I turned to Daniel, searching his face for answers. His jaw clenched, his fists tightened, but he didn't speak. Evelyn's smile widened. "Ah, so you haven't told her? Well then, let me do the honors." She stepped into the room, her eyes glittering with malice. "Margaret," she said slowly, savoring each word, "Thomas didn't come up with this plan alone. He had help from the inside. From someone who knew your father. Someone who had access to your family's secrets long before you even married. Someone you trust with your life." Her gaze shifted to Daniel, sharp and accusing. It was Daniel. The words hit me like a lightning strike. My knees went weak. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, that's not true. Daniel saved me. He fought Thomas. He brought me to the hospital." But Evelyn only laughed, the sound chilling and cruel. "Oh, Margaret, do you really think he did it out of love? He did it because Thomas betrayed him too. They were partners once. But when Thomas chose me over him, well, let's just say their friendship didn't survive." I turned to Daniel, my voice breaking. "Tell me she's lying. Please tell me she's lying." Daniel's eyes met mine. They were full of guilt, full of pain. He opened his mouth to speak. But before he could answer, a gunshot shattered the night. The bullet ripped through the window, glass spraying across the room. Evelyn screamed, ducking for cover. Daniel grabbed me and pulled me to the floor, shielding me with his body. The echo of the gunshot rang in my ears. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear myself think. And then through the broken window I saw him, Thomas, standing in the shadows outside, a gun in his hand, his face twisted with rage. The shattered glass crunched under my knees as Daniel held me tight against the floor. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. My heart hammered so loud it drowned out every other sound, until his voice cut through the night. "Margaret! Thomas!" I froze, my blood running cold. The man I once called my husband, the man who had sworn to protect me, was now standing outside my home with a gun in his hand. His shadow stretched long across the kitchen floor as he stepped closer to the broken window. "Did you think you could hide from me forever?" His voice was low, almost calm, but it carried a madness that chilled my bones. "You're mine, Margaret. Your father's property, his name, his legacy, it all belongs to me. And no one, not Daniel, not Evelyn, not anyone, will take it away from me." Evelyn scrambled to her feet, her face pale. "Thomas, stop this. You've lost your mind. Shooting her won't bring back what we had." Thomas's laugh was cold and hollow. "What we had? Don't flatter yourself, Evelyn. You were just a distraction. Margaret was always the prize." The words sliced through me like knives. My stomach twisted, while rising in my throat. A distraction? So all of it, the lies, the betrayal, the affair, had been nothing more than stepping stones for him to reach what he truly wanted. My father's property. Daniel rose slowly, keeping himself between me and Thomas. His voice was steady but sharp. "You're not touching her again, Thomas. Not now, not ever." Thomas sneered. "And you think you're the hero now, Daniel? You? After everything we did together? Don't forget, you wanted that property just as much as I did. The only difference between us is that I wasn't too much of a coward to act." I gasped, my eyes darting to Daniel. The accusation hung heavy in the air, twisting my insides. "Daniel, is that true?" Daniel's face hardened, but I could see the storm in his eyes. His silence was an answer in itself. Evelyn smirked, almost enjoying the chaos. There it is, Margaret. The truth you've been too blind to see. Both of them wanted your father's wealth. Thomas used you. And Daniel betrayed you long before Thomas ever did. Shut up, Evelyn. Daniel snapped, his voice cracking under the weight of his guilt. But before another word could be spoken, Thomas raised the gun again. His hand was steady, his finger on the trigger. This ends tonight, he said, his eyes locked on me. One way or another, everything your father owned will finally be mine. I screamed as the gun fired. The room filled with the deafening sound of the shot. My ears rang. My body went numb. For a moment, I didn't even know if the bullet had hit me. Then I turned. And what I saw made my heart stop. Someone was lying on the floor, blood spreading fast across their clothes. The ringing in my ears wouldn't stop. My vision blurred as I scrambled across the shattered glass, my trembling hands reaching toward the body on the floor. For one horrible second, I thought it was me. That my soul had left my body and I was looking down at myself. But then the face came into view. It was Evelyn. The bullet had struck her in the shoulder, blood blooming across her coat like a red flower. She groaned in pain, clutching at the wound. Her once proud and taunting smile replaced with raw agony. Thomas, she gasped, her voice weak but still laced with fury. You tried to kill her, and you hit me instead. Thomas's eyes widened, his hands shaking as he lowered the gun just slightly. For the first time he looked uncertain. I didn't mean. Evelyn, you weren't supposed to. But Evelyn spat at the floor, her face contorted with rage. Don't you dare pretend to care now. You used me, Thomas. I stood by you when no one else would. And you throw me away like trash. Her words cracked through the room like another gunshot. I pressed myself against the counter, my chest heaving. Part of me felt a strange satisfaction at her pain. This was the woman who had laughed while my life crumbled. But another part of me shivered, realizing how close I had been to death. Daniel seized the moment. With a sudden movement, he lunged at Thomas, tackling him to the ground. The gun clattered across the floor, sliding under the table. Margaret! Daniel shouted. Get the gun! My legs shook violently as I crawled toward the weapon. My hand reached out, my fingers brushing the cold metal. When suddenly a hand grabbed my wrist. It was Evelyn. Her face was pale, blood dripping down her arm, but her eyes burned with desperation. Don't give it to him, Margaret, she whispered hoarsely. Don't you see? Neither of them deserves your trust. Daniel wants your father's property as much as Thomas does. If you give him that gun, you'll just be trading one master for another. Her grip tightened, weak but determined. Behind us, Thomas and Daniel wrestled on the floor, grunting and cursing. The sound of fists hitting flesh filled the room. I looked at Evelyn, then at Daniel, then at Thomas. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode. For the first time in my life, I didn't know who the real enemy was. And then, another deafening bang filled the air. But this time, it wasn't Thomas's gun. It was another gunshot, from outside the house. And when I turned toward the doorway, I saw a dark figure standing there. A stranger, gun in hand. The smoke from the gun still hung in the air when the stranger stepped forward. The porch light flickered behind him, casting his tall frame into shadow. I could see only his outline, broad shoulders, and the glint of the pistol in his hand. Thomas froze mid-struggle, Daniel's fist still raised above him. Evelyn's grip on my wrist loosened as her eyes widened in shock. Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. The stranger's voice was calm, almost too calm for a man holding a gun in the middle of chaos. I'm the one who's here to settle old debts. He stepped closer, and the light finally revealed his face. My breath caught in my throat. I knew him. Uncle Richard, I gasped. Yes, my father's younger brother. The one who had disappeared years ago after a bitter family feud. The one we thought had left the country and never looked back. Only now here he was, standing in my kitchen. Gun in hand, eyes blazing with fury. Thomas swallowed hard, his face pale. Richard, I thought you were dead. Uncle Richard let out a dark laugh. You would have liked that, wouldn't you, Thomas? But I'm very much alive. And I've been waiting. My brother's death, his property, The way you slithered your way into this family. Did you really think no one would stop you? Daniel slowly stood, his hands raised. Richard, this isn't your fight. Shut up. Richard barked, swinging the gun toward him. You betrayed her too. You thought I didn't know? I know everything. You and Thomas, both scheming for property that was never yours to begin with. My knees felt weak, my mind spinning. The room seemed to tilt as I stared at Richard. Why was he here now after all these years? And why did he look at me not with kindness but with something darker, something hungry? Evelyn coughed weakly, blood staining her lips. Richard, please. I need help. But Richard didn't even look at her. His eyes locked on me instead. Margaret, he said, his voice softening in a way that made my skin crawl. You're the rightful heir. My brother wanted you to have everything. But these snakes, he pointed at Thomas and Daniel. They've tried to steal it all. I won't let them. I'll protect you, just like your father would have wanted. For a fleeting second, hope stirred in my chest. Maybe he truly meant to save me. But then, his smile curved, cold and unsettling. Of course, he added, to protect something, sometimes you have to control it. And if you don't listen to me, Margaret, you'll end up like Evelyn. I froze. My heart stopped. His words were not protection, they were a threat. The room fell silent. 3 men, all dangerous in their own way. Evelyn bleeding on the floor. And me, caught in the middle of their war. Then Richard raised the gun and pointed it directly at me. The barrel of the gun looked huge, though it was just inches wide. My whole body froze like I had turned to stone. My uncle's eyes locked onto mine, dark and unblinking. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. This man wasn't here to save me. He was here to claim me. Richard, please, I stammered, my throat dry. Put the gun down. I'm your niece. I'm family. Family, he sneered. Don't you dare talk to me about family, Margaret. Your father stole everything from me. Do you know why I left? Because he cut me out of his will. He chose you, a little girl, over his own brother. Do you know what that feels like? His voice shook with rage, his hands gripping the gun tighter. My heart sank as the truth poured out of him. Thomas sat up slowly from the floor, his lip bleeding. Richard, listen. We can work something out. You don't need to. Silence. Richard roared, swinging the gun in his direction. Thomas flinched, his face pale. Then Richard turned back to me, his expression twisting into something almost tender. You see, Margaret, you're still young. You don't know how to manage wealth. But I do. Hand everything over to me, and I'll take care of it. I'll take care of you. His words made my stomach churn. I glanced at Evelyn, who was still lying in a pool of her own blood. Her face was ghostly pale, but her lips trembled as she whispered, Don't trust him. Daniel, who had been silent until now, finally stepped forward. His voice was steady but low. Margaret, listen to me. He's bluffing. He won't shoot you. He needs you alive to get to the property. But if you give in to him, you'll never be free. Shut your mouth, boy, Richard hissed, taking a step closer. His gun was steady, unwavering. I didn't know what to do. My mind screamed at me to run. But my legs were too weak to move. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room pressing on me. Richard's demanding. Thomas's calculating. Daniel's pleading. Evelyn's warning. And then, out of nowhere, Richard's voice softened again. Margaret, you have 10 seconds to decide. Are you with me, or against me? He started counting. 10. My breath hitched. 9. Thomas's eyes darted toward the table, where the first gun lay hidden. 8. Daniel shifted his stance, ready to pounce. 7. Evelyn weakly reached her trembling hand toward me, her lips forming the word run. 6. I felt the walls closing in, the air thick with dread. My father's memory flashed before me. His smile, his voice, his promise to always protect me. 5. I knew in that moment, if I didn't act, my story would end right here. 4. And then, before he could say 3, the front door burst open with a crash. Police sirens wailed outside, red and blue lights flashing through the window. Drop the gun, a commanding voice shouted. Richard whipped his head toward the door, his gun still in hand. And that split second was my chance. I dove for the floor, reaching desperately for the gun under the table. My fingers curled around the handle just as Richard turned back to me, his eyes blazing with rage. The room exploded into chaos. The room shook with noise. Police voices thundered from the doorway. "Drop your weapon, sir. Drop it now." Uncle Richard's eyes darted wildly. He tightened his grip on the gun, his breathing fast and uneven. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he backed a step toward me. His body trembled, but his voice cracked with defiance. "You don't understand," he shouted. "This is my house. My right. They stole everything from me." The red and blue lights from the police cars flashed against the walls, making the scene look like a nightmare. I stayed on the floor, gripping the cold steel of the gun I had just pulled from under the table. My hand shook so badly I thought I might drop it. "Margaret!" one officer called. "Move away from him. Now." But how could I? Richard was standing over me, the gun aimed straight at my chest. One wrong move and I'd be gone. Evelyn groaned weakly from the floor, whispering my name. Daniel stood frozen in place, torn between rushing at Richard and obeying the police. Thomas, he stayed still, but his eyes never left me. He was calculating, always calculating. Richard's voice turned almost desperate. "If anyone moves, she dies. You hear me? She dies." He pressed the gun closer to my face. I could smell the metal, sharp and bitter. My heart raced so fast it hurt. I wanted to scream, but I bit down on it, forcing myself to think. The officer outside kept shouting, "Sir, put the weapon down. You don't want to do this." But I could see it in Richard's eyes. He did want to do this. He wanted me under his control, and if he couldn't have that, he'd rather see me dead. I slowly slid the gun behind my leg, trying to hide it from his view. My father's voice echoed in my mind. "Margaret, courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It means you stand, even when you are trembling." Richard jerked his head toward the door. "Back off," he yelled at the police. "Or I'll pull this trigger." The officers didn't move. Their guns were drawn, their eyes locked on him. And then it happened. Evelyn, with the last of her strength, grabbed a broken glass bottle from the floor and flung it at Richard's legs. He stumbled just for a split second. It was the opening I needed. I lifted the gun with both trembling hands, aimed straight at him and pulled the trigger. The blast roared through the room. Richard staggered back, his face frozen in shock. The gun slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Blood bloomed across his chest as he collapsed onto the ground. Silence. My hands were still shaking, the gun heavy in my grip. My ears rang from the sound of the shot. For a long moment no one moved. Then Thomas slowly whispered, his voice cold and low, "You just killed your own uncle." The weight of his words sank deep into my chest. My knees buckled and I dropped the gun. Tears stung my eyes, not from regret, but from the horror of what my life had become. The police rushed in, tackling Daniel and Thomas to the ground, guns still drawn. Evelyn was lifted gently by paramedics, her face pale but her hand reaching out toward me as if to say you did what you had to do. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by far. Because as Richard lay dying on the floor, he used the last of his breath to whisper something that made my blood run cold. "They're still coming." His eyes went blank. His chest stopped moving. And the room fell into silence again. The sound of Richard's last words echoed in my mind like a curse. "They're still coming." I knelt frozen on the floor, staring at his lifeless body. The paramedics rushed around me, the police shouted orders, and Evelyn was being carried out on a stretcher. But I couldn't move. His words clung to me like chains. Who was coming? Why would Richard use his dying breath to say that? An officer bent down beside me. "Ma'am, we need to get you outside. You're not safe here." Not safe here. The words cut deep. For a long time, I had believed the danger was only Thomas, my husband, then Daniel, then Richard. But what if they were all just pieces of a bigger game? As I was led out of the house, I noticed Thomas's face. Even with his hands cuffed, his eyes glowed with something sinister. He wasn't afraid, not even after everything. He looked satisfied. Outside, the night air hit me hard, cool against my sweaty skin. Red and blue lights flashed across the neighborhood. Neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering. The officers guided me toward the ambulance, but before I climbed in, I heard Daniel shout, Margaret, don't trust anyone. Not even them. His voice cracked with desperation. The police shoved him into the back of a squad car, but his words lodged in my chest. Not even them. Did he mean the police? I sat in the ambulance beside Evelyn, who was weak but conscious. She turned her head slightly toward me, her voice faint. Richard wasn't lying, she whispered. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Her eyes flickered, filled with pain. Your father, before he died, he told me there were others. People who wanted the land. Powerful people. Richard wasn't working alone, Margaret. He was just the beginning. The sirens wailed as the ambulance doors shut, but I could barely hear them. My pulse thundered in my ears. Powerful people. Not working alone. Just the beginning. The world spun around me as if the ground itself had been ripped away. And then Evelyn's hand gripped mine with surprising strength. Listen to me, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. They won't stop until they have everything. And if you don't find out who they are first, you won't live to tell the story. Her words stabbed into my heart. Before I could answer, the ambulance swerved sharply, throwing us both against the side. The driver cursed loudly, brakes screeching. I looked out the back window just in time to see it. A black SUV speeding after us, its headlights bright, engine roaring. Someone was chasing us. The ambulance swerved violently as the black SUV tailed us, its headlights blinding, its engine growling like a beast in the night. The paramedic clutched the rails to keep balance. What the? Who are they? They're not stopping. I screamed, pointing at the rear window. They're after us. Evelyn groaned, holding her stomach. It's them. Margaret. It's the ones Richard warned us about. The driver slammed his fist on the horn, trying to weave between traffic. The siren wailed, but the SUV didn't care. It sped closer, ramming the ambulance from behind. Bam! The whole vehicle jolted forward. I nearly hit my head against the wall. My heart pounded so loudly it drowned out the sirens. Hold on back there, the driver yelled. The paramedic grabbed the radio. Dispatch. Dispatch. We're being pursued. Black SUV on Highway 9. Request immediate backup. Static filled the air, followed by a crackling response. Copy that, backup en route. Hold tight. But I could see the truth in the rearview mirror. The SUV wasn't going to wait. The back doors rattled under the force of another hit. The hinges groaned, metal straining. One more ram, and they'd fly open. They're trying to push us off the road, the paramedic shouted. Evelyn clutched my hand, her voice trembling but urgent. Don't let them take us, Margaret. Promise me don't let them. My throat tightened. I won't. I promise. The SUV pulled up beside us now, tires screeching. I saw the shadow of a man in the passenger seat, a mask covering his face. He rolled down the window and pointed a gun. Down, I screamed, throwing myself over Evelyn. Bang! Bang! Glass shattered. The back window exploded into shards. The paramedic dove to the floor as the driver swerved wildly to avoid another hit. They're going to kill us, the paramedic shouted. I spotted a fire extinguisher strapped to the wall. My hands shook as I grabbed it, my mind screaming at me to do something. Anything. The SUV rammed us again, harder this time. The ambulance tilted dangerously, tires screeching, the smell of burning rubber filling the air. Evelyn screamed as the stretcher slid, slamming into the wall. I couldn't think, I just moved. I yanked the back doors open, the night wind howling in my face. The SUV was right there, almost kissing the bumper. I could see the masked man aiming his gun again. With every ounce of strength I had, I hurled the fire extinguisher straight at him. It smashed against the SUV's windshield with a deafening crack. The driver swerved violently, losing control. The SUV spun, tires squealing, before flipping over with a horrifying roll. Metal crunched. Sparks flew. Flames burst from the hood as the SUV landed upside down, skidding across the highway. The ambulance rocked from the force of the explosion, then steadied. The smell of smoke filled the air. For a moment, there was silence. Only the wail of our siren and Evelyn's shallow breaths. The paramedic slowly peeked out the shattered window. His face was pale. They're dead. They didn't make it. But deep down I knew better. Something told me this wasn't the end, because as we sped away, I caught sight of the wreck in the mirror. Through the flames, one of the masked men was crawling out of the SUV, burned, bloodied, but alive, and his eyes locked on me, blazing with fury. The ambulance finally pulled into the emergency bay of the hospital, sirens still wailing. Nurses and doctors rushed forward, wheeling Evelyn away. I wanted to follow her, but two police officers stepped in my path. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," one of them said firmly. I frowned. "But I have to stay with Evelyn, she's injured." The other officer shook his head. "We'll take care of her. Right now we need a statement about what happened on the highway." Something in their tone didn't sit right with me. My chest tightened and Daniel's warning from earlier slammed back into my memory. Don't trust anyone. Not even them. I hesitated. "Can I at least call my lawyer?" The officer's jaw tightened, but then he forced a smile. "Of course. But first, just a few questions." They led me into a small room inside the hospital. It was too quiet, too cold. One officer closed the door, and the sound of the lock clicking sent shivers racing down my spine. I sat down slowly, my hands trembling. "Why are you locking the door?" The taller officer leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. His smile had vanished. "Because, Mrs. Margaret, we don't need distractions. We want the truth." My heart pounded. The truth about what? The other officer leaned in close, his eyes dark. "Your father's property." It felt like the floor fell out from under me. I stammered. What does that have to do with?" He cut me off. "Don't play dumb. You know very well why people are after you. That land isn't just farmland, Margaret. What's buried underneath it, people would kill for." A chill ran through my body. My father had worked that land his whole life. I always thought it was just ordinary soil, a simple inheritance. But now, what's buried? I whispered. The taller officer smirked. "Let's just say, oil runs deeper than blood." Before I could react, the door burst open. Real hospital security stormed in, followed by another set of police officers, different ones. "Step away from her," one shouted. The two officers who had cornered me spun around, their faces twisting with anger. In a flash they pulled out guns. Bang! Bang! The room erupted in chaos. The real police fired back. I ducked under the table as bullets shattered glass and ricocheted off walls. When it was over, the two fake officers lay sprawled on the ground, blood pooling beneath them. One of the hospital guards kicked away their guns and I peeked out, my whole body shaking. The detective in charge walked over to me, his face grim. Those men, they weren't police. They were imposters. Assassins sent to finish what Richard started. I stared at the bodies, bile rising in my throat. Assassins. Oil. My father's land. This wasn't just about Thomas's betrayal anymore. This was bigger. Much bigger. As the detectives led me out of the bloody room, I caught one last glimpse of the dead imposters. And my blood froze. Tattooed on the wrist of one man was a symbol I recognized. The same mark I had once seen on my father's old documents. The mark of the people who wanted him dead. I couldn't sleep that night at the hospital. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Richard's lifeless body, Thomas's smug smile in handcuffs, Evelyn's pale face, and the assassin's tattoos. The same mark my father once tried to hide. The detective who saved me earlier returned to my room just before dawn. His name was Detective Harris, a stern man with gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to read straight into your soul. "Margaret," he said as he closed the door behind him, "we've been digging into your father's history, and I think it's time you knew the truth." I sat up, my chest tight. The truth about what? He placed a folder on the table. Inside were yellowed documents, photographs, and a map of my father's land. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. One picture showed my father standing beside men I didn't recognize, men in suits who looked powerful and dangerous. Another photo showed oil rigs, not far from our land. Detective Harris leaned closer. "Your father's property sits on top of one of the richest untapped oil reserves in this state. He discovered it years ago but kept it hidden." Oil. My father. I shook my head stunned. But why would he hide it? That could have made him rich. Harris's voice dropped low. Because he knew the kind of people who wanted it. People who wouldn't stop at anything: bribery, murder, corruption. Your father valued his family's safety over wealth. But keeping the secret didn't stop them. They killed him anyway. My throat tightened as tears filled my eyes. So my father didn't just die. He was murdered. Harris nodded solemnly. Yes. And Thomas knew. He married you because he knew what you stood to inherit. Once your father was gone, he thought the property would pass to you, and through you to him. The puzzle pieces slammed together in my mind. My husband poisoning me wasn't just out of hatred or greed. It was calculated. He wanted me dead so no one would question his claim to the land. And then he could freely use my father's wealth to spoil another woman. My whole body shook with rage. Harris touched my shoulder gently. Margaret, listen to me. Richard wasn't lying when he said they're still coming. The oil reserve is worth billions. These people will keep sending killers until they get it. If you want to survive, you need to fight back. I wiped my tears, my jaw hardening. Fight back how? Before he could answer, the hospital intercom crackled to life. Code black. Code black. All staff evacuate immediately. The lights flickered. Alarms blared. Harris's eyes widened. He pulled his gun from his holster. They've found you. Stay behind me. The hallway erupted in chaos as masked men stormed into the hospital, guns raised. Nurses screamed, patients fled, and bullets shattered the sterile white walls. I clutched the folder of my father's secrets to my chest. My legs trembled, but I forced myself to stand. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just running from danger. I was ready to face it. The hallway filled with smoke as alarms blared and lights flickered. I clutched the folder against my chest, my heart pounding so loud I thought the gunman would hear it. Detective Harris pushed me behind him, his gun drawn, his jaw tight. Stay low. Stay close. Don't make a sound. I crouched, trembling, as masked men in black stormed down the hall shouting orders. Their voices were cold, professional. These weren't ordinary criminals. These were trained killers. One of them kicked open a patient's room. A nurse screamed. A single gunshot silenced her. I gasped, covering my mouth with my shaking hand. Harris pulled me further down the corridor, every step silent but urgent. Margaret, he whispered harshly. They're here for you. That file you're holding is worth more than all of our lives. Don't let them take it. I nodded, my knees weak, but inside me something stronger was rising: rage. The same rage that burned in me when I learned what Thomas had done. We slipped into a dark storage room. Harris shut the door quietly and leaned against it, his gun ready. We'll wait until they pass, he whispered. But then, the doorknob rattled. Harris raised his gun, motioning for me to stay silent. The knob twisted harder. Then with a crash, the door was kicked open, slamming Harris to the ground. 3 masked men stormed inside. Their eyes landed on me instantly. There she is, one barked. I stumbled backward, my back against the shelves, the folder clutched tight to my chest. One man lunged for me, but Harris rolled to his feet and fired. The bullet struck him in the shoulder, sending him crashing into a wall. The other 2 raised their guns, aimed at me. Move and she dies, one shouted. Harris froze, his gun still raised, sweat dripping down his face. My heart thundered. This was it. The end. But then, through the broken doorway, another figure appeared, bloody, weak, but alive. Evelyn. She held a fire extinguisher in her hands, her face pale but determined. Without warning, she slammed it into the back of one gunman's head. He dropped instantly. The other spun around in shock, just as Harris fired. The bullet hit him square in the chest. Silence fell, broken only by the ringing in my ears. My knees gave way, and I collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down my face. Evelyn dropped the fire extinguisher and staggered toward me. I told you, she whispered, her voice raspy. They won't stop until they have everything. I held her tightly, my body shaking. Harris stood in the doorway, reloading his gun, his eyes hard. This was just the first wave, he said grimly. More will come. You both need to get out of here, now. But before we could move, an explosion rocked the hospital. The walls shook, flames burst down the far corridor, and smoke choked the air. Someone had set the building on fire, and we were trapped inside. The explosion threw me against the shelves, knocking the wind out of me. Flames roared down the hallway, spreading fast, the air thick with black smoke that stung my eyes. "Move!" Detective Harris barked, yanking me to my feet. He grabbed Evelyn by the arm, pulling her forward. "If we stay, we're dead." We stumbled into the hallway, heat blasting our faces, alarms shrieking. Ceiling tiles crashed down, sparks flying everywhere. Patients screamed as they ran, some covered in ash and blood. Doctors tried to push stretchers through the chaos, but fire ate everything in its path. I clutched the folder tightly, coughing. "Which way?" "Stairs," Harris shouted, pointing. But just as we turned, a wall of fire collapsed in front of us, cutting off the path. Panic surged through me. "We're trapped." Harris's eyes darted around. "Not yet. Follow me." He pushed through a side corridor. Smoke curled along the ceiling. My lungs burned as we ran, Evelyn leaning against me for support. I could feel her trembling. She wasn't strong enough to keep going much longer. We burst into another hallway, but suddenly Harris raised his arm, stopping us. Through the smoke I saw them. 2 more masked men waiting at the end of the corridor. They weren't panicking like everyone else. No, they stood calmly, guns raised like predators waiting for prey. One of them spoke, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Hand over the folder, Margaret. You don't have to die in this fire." My blood froze. They knew my name. Harris aimed his gun. "Run, Margaret." "No," I cried, clutching Evelyn tighter. "Not without you." The gunman opened fire. Bullets ripped through the walls, sparks flying. Harris shot back, ducking behind a doorway. The sound was deafening, echoing over the screams and the roar of the flames. "Go!" Harris yelled again. "I'll cover you." Tears blurred my vision as I pulled Evelyn, forcing her forward. We ran, stumbling toward the other end of the hall, bullets whizzing past. My legs screamed in pain, my chest felt like it would explode. But I didn't stop. Behind us, Harris's gun went silent. I froze mid-step. No more shots. Evelyn pulled at me weakly. "Don't stop. Margaret, don't." But I couldn't move. My heart sank as I turned my head. Through the smoke, I saw Harris fall to his knees. One of the masked men stood over him, gun aimed at his head. "No," I screamed. But my voice was drowned out by the next gunshot. Harris collapsed, lifeless. I couldn't breathe. My body shook violently, my ears ringing. Evelyn's grip on me tightened, trying to pull me away, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the scene. The gunman looked up, locking eyes with me through the mask. Slowly, he raised his gun and pointed it straight at me. And then, he started walking forward. The sight of Harris's lifeless body tore something inside me. He had protected me until his very last breath, and now he was gone. The gunman stepped closer, his boots echoing over the crackling flames. His gun was steady, his pace slow, almost deliberate, like he wanted me to feel every second of fear. "Margaret," he said calmly through the smoke. "You're not leaving this hospital alive. Hand it over." My grip on the folder tightened so hard that my knuckles turned white. Evelyn clung to my arm, whispering weakly, "Run, please, Margaret, run." But my legs refused to move. I was frozen, staring into the barrel of the gun. Then suddenly, crash! The ceiling above us gave way, collapsing in flames. Smoke and debris rained down, momentarily blocking the gunman's view. Evelyn yanked my arm with all the strength she had left. Now, we ran. Coughing, stumbling, nearly blind from the smoke. I dragged Evelyn with me down another hallway. My lungs burned like fire was inside me. My eyes stung so badly I could hardly see, but fear drove me forward. Behind us, the gunman shouted, his footsteps pounding closer. He was chasing us. We rounded a corner and spotted a glowing red sign through the haze. "Exit." My heart leapt. Salvation. But when we burst through the stairwell door, we stopped dead in our tracks. The stairs were engulfed in flames, fire roaring upward, swallowing the metal steps. There was no way down. I felt my hope collapse. Trapped again. Evelyn coughed violently, her body shaking. She couldn't go much further. "Margaret," she rasped. I can't." I pulled her close, tears streaming down my face. "No, Evelyn, stay with me. Please. We'll get out, I promise." But then the stairwell door slammed open behind us. The gunman stepped inside, the firelight flickering against his mask. He raised his gun, the metal glinting in the glow. There was nowhere left to run. I pressed Evelyn against the wall behind me, shielding her with my body. My hands shook as I clutched the folder tighter, my heart hammering so loud it felt like it might burst out of my chest. The gunman took one step closer, his voice low and cold. "This is where it ends, Margaret." And then bang! A gunshot rang out. But it didn't come from him. The gunman staggered backward, clutching his side. His weapon clattered to the floor. Through the smoke, another figure emerged, holding a gun. My eyes widened in shock. It wasn't a doctor. It wasn't a nurse. It was Thomas, my husband, standing there, alive, with a gun in his hand, and a wicked smile on his face. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The fire roared around us. Smoke curled up the stairwell. Evelyn whimpered against my shoulder. Yet all I could see was him. Thomas. My husband. The man who had once sworn to protect me, then poisoned me for property and another woman, now standing in front of me like some ghost rising from the ashes. He lowered the smoking gun, his eyes locking on mine. "Margaret," he said softly, almost tenderly. "You're alive." His voice sent shivers through me, not from relief, but from rage. The wounded gunman groaned, crawling toward his fallen weapon. Thomas kicked it away and pressed his own gun against the man's chest. With one squeeze of the trigger, it was over. The sharp echo of the gunshot made Evelyn flinch in my arms. My whole body trembled, but not from fear this time. From confusion. I forced the words out, my voice hoarse. Why are you here, Thomas?" He turned back to me, stepping closer through the smoke, his eyes glinting strangely in the firelight. "To protect you." Protect me? My heart twisted. The same man who had tried to kill me was now claiming to save me? Evelyn coughed, weakly clinging to my dress. "Don't trust him," she rasped. I pressed her closer, my mind racing. She was right. I couldn't just believe him. But the fire was closing in fast. The floor beneath us groaned, beams cracking above. We didn't have time to stand there and argue about trust. Thomas extended his hand toward me. "Come with me. There's a way out. I swear it." I stared at his hand, torn between hatred and desperate need. The flames licked the walls, and Evelyn was fading in my arms. If I refused him, we could all burn alive. If I accepted his help, I might be walking into another trap. My lips trembled as I whispered, "If you wanted me dead, why save me now?" A strange smile tugged at his lips. "Because, Margaret, if anyone is going to decide how your story ends, it will be me." Before I could react, a violent rumble shook the stairwell. The ceiling cracked, huge chunks of burning debris crashing down between us. The heat was unbearable, the smoke suffocating. Thomas leapt forward, grabbing my arm roughly. "Now or never," he shouted. I didn't have time to think. Evelyn was slipping in my grasp, unconscious from the smoke. My own body screamed for air. And in that moment, trapped between the fire and my husband's grip, I realized, whatever came next, my fate was no longer in my hands. The fire swallowed everything in its path, but Thomas's grip on my arm was even stronger than the flames. He dragged me forward, half carrying, half pulling me as Evelyn's limp body weighed heavy in my other arm. "Through here," Thomas shouted, kicking open a metal door at the far end of the hallway. We stumbled into a storage room, the heat less intense but the air still thick with smoke. I fell to my knees, coughing, holding Evelyn close. She was barely breathing. My tears fell onto her soot-streaked face. Thomas crouched in front of me, his gun tucked into his belt now, his eyes fixed on me. "You still don't trust me," he said quietly. I glared at him, anger fighting against my exhaustion. "You poisoned me, Thomas. You tried to take everything from me. And now you show up here like some savior." My voice cracked. "Why?" For the first time, his confident mask faltered. His lips trembled, his eyes darkened. "Because I thought I wanted the property. I thought I wanted her. But when I saw you lying in that hospital bed, weak and broken, I realized." His voice broke. "I realized I'd already lost the only thing that mattered." His words pierced me, but I couldn't let them. I couldn't allow my heart to soften, not after everything. "You don't get to say that. I whispered fiercely. You don't get to pretend you loved me after trying to destroy me. Evelyn stirred weakly in my arms, whispering, Don't listen. But Thomas's hand shot out suddenly, gripping the folder that still rested against my chest. Then at least give me this, he hissed. If you can't forgive me, give me the property and I'll let you walk away. The fire cracked through the walls around us, the building groaning like it would collapse any moment. Evelyn coughed violently, her body shaking. I clutched her tighter, glaring up at Thomas. You'll have to kill me first, I spat. His face hardened. For a long second he said nothing. Then slowly, he drew his gun again and pointed it at me. His hand trembled, but his eyes were steady. This is the only way, he whispered. My chest tightened. The flames roared louder, the walls trembling. Evelyn slipped into unconsciousness again, and I knew. This was the end. Either the fire would take us, or Thomas would. But then boom. The wall behind us exploded outward, firefighters crashing in with axes and hoses, shouting orders through the smoke. Over here. Survivors, one of them yelled. Thomas spun around in shock, lowering his gun for just a second. That was all it took. One of the firefighters tackled him to the ground, knocking the weapon free. I cried out, clutching Evelyn as two others lifted us up, dragging us toward safety. The last thing I saw before the smoke swallowed everything was Thomas's face, twisted, desperate, reaching for me as he screamed my name. And then darkness. When I woke up, I was in another hospital bed. My body was weak, my lungs burned, but I was alive. Evelyn lay in the bed beside me, hooked to oxygen, but she too was alive. A nurse leaned over me gently. You're safe now. The police have him. Him. Thomas. I closed my eyes, tears slipping down my face. Safe but broken. I had lost so much, my peace, my trust, my love. But I had survived. And survival was its own kind of victory. Now to all of you watching and listening to my story from every part of the country, please take this lesson with you. Greed can turn love into poison, and betrayal can come from the ones closest to us. Trust wisely, love carefully, and never let anyone destroy the strength inside you. I'm Margaret from Texas, 68 years old, and this has been my story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the notification button for more stories. And tell me in the comments, from what part of the country are you watching from? 'Cause stories like mine are meant to be heard. Broken Heart Bride with Veil Fire.